Before this story even begins, before you hear a single word, before you decide whether to stay or scroll, pause. Not for long, just a second. Because if this video somehow found its way onto your screen, if you didn't click away, if you're still here right now, then this isn't random. Stories like this don't just appear. They arrive. They arrive quietly, almost unnoticed, at a very specific moment in your life, when something inside you is ready to hear them. Maybe you don't know what that something is yet. Maybe you can't name it. But it's there. So before we go any further, do one simple thing. Subscribe. Not for the algorithm. Not for numbers. Not even for me. Do it for yourself. Because stories like this, the quiet ones, the uncomfortable ones, the ones people avoid saying out loud, they rarely get told the way they should. And once you step into one, it's very hard to walk away. Stay until the end. And I promise you this. The ending won't just explain what happened. It will change the way you understand everything that came before it. My name is Ava Rowan. I'm 30 years old. And what I'm about to tell you is something I never thought I would say out loud. Not like this. Not to strangers. Not in a way that can't be taken back. Because once you say something like this, it becomes real. Permanent. And some truths, they feel safer when they stay unspoken. This isn't the kind of story people expect. When they hear the word betrayal, there's no shouting, no door slamming, no dramatic moment where everything explodes all at once. No. This kind of story is quieter than that. Much quieter. It doesn't crash into your life. It seeps in. Slowly. Patiently. Almost politely. It grows in the background. In the spaces you stop paying attention to. It whispers instead of screams. And that's what makes it dangerous. This is a story about loneliness. But not the kind people think of. Not the kind that comes from being alone. This is the kind that exists inside a life that looks full. Inside a relationship. Inside a home. Inside a routine that, from the outside, seems perfect. It's the kind of loneliness that doesn't ask for help. Because it doesn't even fully understand itself yet. It's also a story about desire. But not the obvious kind. Not the sudden, overwhelming, can't ignore it kind. No. This kind builds. Quietly. Gradually. So slowly that you don't even recognize it for what it is. Until one day, it's already too late to pretend it isn't there. And most of all, this is a story about choices. Small ones. The kind you don't think matter. The kind you don't even remember making. The kind that feel harmless in the moment. Almost invisible. But they stack. One on top of the other. Until one day you look back. And realize those small, forgettable decisions have quietly rewritten the entire direction of your life. For most of my 20s, I believed something very simple. That life could be built carefully. Predictably. Step by step. Like assembling furniture with instructions laid out in front of you. Clear. Structured. Safe. You graduate. You find a stable job. You fall in love with someone reliable. You get married. You buy a house. You create routines. And then, you stick to them. Repeat. That was the plan. That was the formula. And I believed in it completely. I thought that was what happiness looked like. Not excitement. Not chaos. Not unpredictability. But stability. Structure. Control. I thought that was maturity. I thought that was success. I thought that was enough. I married Ethan when I was 25. We had been together since college. And if I'm being honest, there was never really a question about whether we would end up together. It just made sense. He wasn't just my first serious relationship. He was my safest one. The kind of person everyone assumes you'll marry. Including you. Ethan was steady. Predictable in the best way. Kind, but in a way that never surprised you. Gentle, but never overwhelming. He didn't bring chaos into a room. He brought order. He approached life like everything had a blueprint. Measured. Planned. Intentional. Nothing left to chance. And in the beginning, that made me feel secure. Protected. Certain. Our home reflected him perfectly. Neutral colors. Clean lines. Everything organized. Everything intentional. There was a place for everything. And everything stayed in its place. It looked like something out of a magazine. The kind with titles like Effortless Living or Perfect Balance. The kind of life people admire quietly, without asking too many questions. We were that couple. The one people pointed to and said, they've got everything figured out. And from the outside, it looked true. But there's something no one tells you about a life that looks perfect. Sometimes, it only looks that way because nothing inside it is moving. That was us. Stillness disguised as peace. Routine mistaken for happiness. Structure confused with connection. At first, I didn't notice it happening. There was no single moment where everything changed. No argument. No breaking point. No obvious-ift. If there had been, maybe I would have seen it. Maybe I would have stopped it. But it didn't happen like that. It was quieter. Much quieter. It was in the evenings, when Ethan would sit next to me on the couch, laptop open, eyes fixed on the screen, and I would talk about my day. Not because anything remarkable had happened, but because I wanted to share something. Anything. And he would nod. Respond at the right moments. Say the right words. But not really listen. Not fully. Not deeply. It was in the mornings, when our conversations slowly turned into logistics. Did you call the electrician? What time is your meeting? Can you pick up groceries? We spoke to each other every day. But somewhere along the way, we stopped actually communicating. We stopped asking questions that didn't have practical answers. We stopped wondering out loud. Stopped dreaming. Stopped exploring each other's thoughts. We shared a house. We shared a bed. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, we stopped sharing a world. And I told myself this was normal. Because that's what everyone says, right? That passion fades. That curiosity settles. That excitement softens into comfort. That this quiet, predictable rhythm is what long-term relationships become. But no one prepares you for this. No one explains what it actually feels like. What it's like when loneliness doesn't come from being alone, but from being unseen. Because that kind of loneliness doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't make noise. It just settles in. Quietly. Like dust. Layer by layer. So gradually you don't notice it building. Until one day, you realize you've been breathing it in all along. Day after day, I felt myself fading. Not physically. Nothing you could point to. Nothing anyone else could see. But something deeper. Something harder to explain. I laughed less. Spoke less. Felt less. Things that used to excite me just didn't anymore. Not because they changed, but because something inside me had. And the worst part? No one noticed. Not because they didn't care, but because I had become very good at disappearing quietly, at functioning, at smiling when I needed to, at playing the role of someone who was fine. I missed myself. Not in a dramatic way. Not all at once. But in small, subtle flashes. Moments where I would remember a version of me that felt alive, curious, present. A version of me that didn't just exist, but actually felt something. And then, Luca entered the picture.